I'm your host, Tony Arenas, and today we're going to talk about the selection tools that are available in Illustrator. So there are two selection tools in Illustrator. You're going to have your regular selection tool, which is going to allow you to select a whole object together to move around, manipulate whatever you need it to do. And then also if you need to translate it, whether it be rotation or even scaling, you can easily do that with the selection tool itself. It's very simple. You can just select the object itself, and then I can go ahead and pick a corner of the actual object and then scale it down. Now, if you still want to constrain proportions, making sure that all of the proportions are correct, you can scale it down using the Shift button. And then if you want to center it and scale it, you can use the Alt and Shift to scale it proportionally from the center. Now, if you let go of the Shift, you can still scale it from the center, just as not as proportion and so forth. Keep in mind, if you go to your object transform, and then if you go to scale, there is a button that you might want to actually consider keeping, and that is scale the corners and scale the stroke and effects. This right here will allow you to control the scale, but it will also control the scale of the actual strokes to the actual object. Otherwise, it's going to maintain to the proper size. So in the previous case, if I go again and let's reset this again, take this out, I'm going to hit OK. When I scale this down, it's going to stay at 1 point versus if I scale it down the other way, it will actually reduce the size of the stroke. You can tell right there that I've reduced it by half. All right. Next, we want to look at is the direct selection tool. Now you can select the whole object together with the direct selection tool, but it doesn't allow you to scale like normal unless you hit other buttons like the control button and then you're back into the regular selection button. But this will allow you to select anchor points within the actual object you have selected. Or you can just go ahead and select directly into the anchor points as well and do it that way. This way, you're able to use your selection and do some various changes with your selection. So this gives you, allowing you to move any single anchor point that you have selected and move it around to where you need it. Now, if I need to select multiple anchor points, I can easily select that, hold Shift on my keyboard, and select another. And then from here, I can move both in that direction. This will also bring up the little circles we were talking about in another video, where you're able to adjust the size of these corners here, and it will size them together if you have them selected together in individual points. Or you can just go 1 point and then just go ahead and size that one. If you're trying to maintain consistency throughout your particular shape and you're doing this, select both of them and save yourself the time of trying to match them up and just do them together, and it'll get things through. Now, this will also bring up other points with your handles if you have a curve with your anchor points. So with this particular circle here, I can actually readjust these handles here, but I'm going to be readjusting both sides of the handle. So it's going to affect both sides with the rotation, but not when I'm dragging out the handles here. So I can readjust a lot of cool things with this if I wanted to, and do some really neat different things with it. Now, there is another tool within the pen tool panel that will allow you to readjust the anchor points, or at least the handles, individually. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to pull down my pen tool option here. I'm going to go to my anchor point tool, and this here will allow me to readjust an actual anchor point. So if I select the anchor point though, it's going to delete the two handles, and then I can use that to select again to bring out the two handles the way I want to on both sides. Now, if you already have the anchor point selected, it's not going to delete anything. But when you bring up the tools here, when I readjust it with the anchor point tool, this will allow me to change just that handle I've selected and not both. So I could do some really weird adjustments here. Grab the second one here. And I could do some really neat design work, like make a particular teardrop. So you have a lot of cool options with adjusting some of those handles there. So the idea here is even if you make an object, anything that you make in Illustrator, you can readjust accordingly depending on how you want it to work around and how you want it to move and everything else. Everything is adjustable in Illustrator, and that's the beauty of this. That's the beauty of readjusting a lot of the anchor points here. That was the center. There we go. And I can move a lot of these anchor points around just to make what I needed to make and so forth. So you're going to spend a lot of time using the direct selection tool, especially just readjusting small aspects of certain tools or certain ways. Don't be afraid with it. Just move it around and just have a good time with it. And then when you're doing particular shaping or just readjusting certain shades or whatever, it's easier to do it with that direct selection tool and so forth. Also, on a side note, when I do in another video, I will be going over groups with Illustrator. The direct selection tool will bypass any of the selection groups, and when we get there, you'll see. Okay, once again, my name is Tony Arenas, and this has been both selection tools and the anchor point tool in Illustrator.